You're listening to the TV Obsessive channel, presented by TVObscast.com.
Okay, welcome back to the TV Obsessive podcast. Here today for episode 68. As always, I'm Cameron Craig, executive editor of TVObsessive.com, joined by Ryan Kirksey, writer and contributor for the site. How you doing today, Ryan?
I'm doing really great. Good day, good week so far. I did want to ask it is we talked about this a couple weeks ago. It's the traditional debut week of, network television shows. Did you start watching anything this week with the traditional calendar?
No. Really?
I predicted that would be your answer.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess maybe a couple things are on my radar. I don't know. I didn't find time for all that much. We agreed we are going to talk about Penelope starting today, which is the plan, the latter part of the pod. Watch the first four episodes. So that took up some of my time. And
Yeah.
then as per usual, I kind of like watched some YouTube videos and stuff.
Yeah.
In football, there's too much
Oh,
football, right? Like I don't like that there's Thursday night football actually because it means that there's like only ever 2 days in between when there's football again. I don't
I
like
did
that.
see a couple after another boring game on Thursday night, a small movement for let's just replace Thursday night football and always make it a doubleheader on Monday night. What are your thoughts there?
I don't like the Monday night doubleheader either. Too much. One game on Monday.
Only
Put all
game.
the games on Sunday, and then one game on Monday, like it
Yeah,
used to be.
okay.
So I don't like the Europe games either. Started at like 9 in the morning.
It,
No, it's too
it it it
much.
doesn't matter. Amazon paid too many billions of dollars. They're not getting rid of Thursday night football anytime soon.
No, they aren't. But did you watch it? I do, not to go into this too much, but I do feel like Al Michaels is bored with football. And that comes through, and it's not the best experience, but I
Yes.
did
Now
kind
Al
of
Michaels
appreciate
is never held back on how bored he is in games or how invested he is in certain betting angles of games. That's always been his calling
it.
card.
I like how even though they've legalized gambling to a large extent, he still tends to wink at it rather than say it
Yeah.
explicitly. So this field goal will be important for some people, if you know what I mean.
Well, as someone who wrote about and predicted that the Cowboys would cover the spread, yes, that field goal that the Dallas Kicker missed was quite substantially significant for me, but we will
Yeah,
not get into that.
yeah. Anyway, anyhow, let's push forward. So as per usual, latter part of the pod, we'll be delving into something this week. It will be new Netflix show Penelope from the Duplass brothers. And first, we'll talk a bit about what's been in the news this week. We don't have a ton, really, but it's September 27th. What do we got, Ryan?
Well, I would really like to start with Last of Us if we can do that because they released
Sure.
a teaser trailer this week. I don't remember if beyond the third episode, if you have seen any of this, but this
No, but
trailer, this trailer did the whole I've got goosebumps hair standing up. Like I'm super excited about this season now after watching this trailer. This looked awesome to me.
cool. I went ahead and watched the trailer. It
Yeah.
was pretty cool. I did not, we did, because we covered episode three, I watched the first three episodes and then I haven't continued, but I also like, I know what happens,
Yeah.
because I edited your recaps amongst other things. And then like, I feel like I also know what happens in season two, because Mike Crowley wrote an article on the site about the second video game.
Ah,
And I
okay.
edited that. So I know what happens in the next video game. So I presume that I basically know what happens in the show. None of which means it's not worth watching, and maybe I'll find time to get around to it, and the style of it is good. And I am a fan of Caitlin Dever. Is that how you say her last name? Do you
I
know for
thought it
sure?
was Deaver, but yeah, one of
Dever?
the two.
I'm
She
not
is
sure.
she is introduced here finally. Yeah.
Yeah. So you know, she made an impression on me from Justified, the role in Justified.
Yes. Yes.
Um, so I'm kind of curious to maybe see her in this show. Maybe I'll catch up by the time we get to season two and watch
Yeah,
it.
Caitlin Deaver, one of several big names that's joining the cast for this second season. I knew about Caitlin Deaver. I knew about Jeffrey Wright. I must have just slipped through me for somehow that Catherine O'Hara, who's prominently featured in this trailer, will be in this second season. So yeah, there are several big names they're adding to the cast. I have just started the YouTube watch of all whatever 12 hours of the second video game, kind of like I did for the just to understand the concept of what's going on. Not much through at all, but curious to see what happens here and how this translates. They had some deviations, like the episode we talked about last season. But yeah, very, very excited just based on what I saw so far.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, how they deviate. It always is with this sort of thing. Um, there's something else I was going to say, I think, but I forgot what it was. So we'll just seg. Talking about new faces in The Last of Us, we could segue from that to more casting news for Yellow Jackets. Hilary
Mm.
Swank is adding that is going to be in season 3, apparently.
Yeah, Hilary Swank now joining Joel McHale, presumably in the modern day timeline. Any thoughts that you can
Yeah. I mean, here's
discreetly
the
share on what
thing.
this might be?
Pretty sure the ages line up pretty well
Okay.
for her to possibly be, another previously unmet survivor in the 2021-2022 timeline. Um,
I
so I
remember
don't know.
you
We could
you
guess
you're
Mari,
checking
perhaps.
Joel. Yeah, you were checking Joel McHale's birthday last time we talked about this. I don't know if you've done that research on Hilary Swank.
No, I just know. I mean, like she must be. You're right. She must be around the right age. I
Yeah,
have the feeling that she's maybe, yeah, like just a little bit older
yeah, I think
than
so.
I am. I mean, it's probably is part of why I enjoy the Yellow Jackets so much. They're like 1996 high schoolers, and then in 2021, like I think they were the class of 1996. I was class of 1998, so I feel like this is directly my generation, like being featured in both timelines of the show. And
Yep.
I do recall kind of being around that age, and Hilary Swank being again a little older, but already a known actress, right?
She had some things in the late 90s, absolutely. But yeah, I think she's sort of our one of our contemporaries. I'm graduated the same year you did. So yeah, I mean, this show, we've talked about this ad nauseum. This hits all the notes for us, and I'm quite sure we will be covering it when it comes back.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, look, there's a chance too. Hilary Swank could just be a new character, kind of like Elijah Wood was last season.
Yeah.
But she would fit, I think, age wise as a casting of one of the Yellow Jackets in the um, present timeline. I guess you would say the show's so weird because it's almost
Yeah. Yeah.
it feels like the 1990s timeline is the present and the other one's the future somehow when I
That's
watch it. It
right.
doesn't feel like flashbacks,
That's right.
you
That's right.
know.
Yeah.
So anyway, looking forward to that. We could definitely speculate more about who she might play or that sort of thing. But we don't know. We'll find out.
Yeah. Well, speaking
Mhm.
of stuff from our childhood, I saw a note here this week. There's a quick story about some people actually being hired now for a show that Amazon is trying to produce based on RoboCop. You remember the old
Yeah.
1987 movie where technology and the police and corporations join forces, and now Amazon apparently has brought on showrunners and producers to create a show based on this. Thoughts here? You excited about a RoboCop reboot television show?
I'm curious. I'm
Yeah,
intrigued. I am. RoboCop is such a weird
yeah.
franchise. I don't know. Are you a fan of like the original RoboCop?
I love the first one. I cannot say I've spent much time, if any, with the sequels and the reboot. I think there was several years ago. I haven't spent time with any of those.
I did not see the reboot. It very much struck me from seeing trailers and such like they were kind of sanitizing it. I think it was rated PG-13. But this
Yeah,
is part of what's so weird. The first RoboCop is rated R and totally deserves it. It's like a hard,
yes.
like but the marketing, I think, always involved a certain element of marketing to kids because the 80s were so weird. Like
Oh
I
yeah,
saw that film as a kid,
exactly.
and I probably shouldn't have been exposed to that when I was, 7, 8 years old or whatever it was.
I
I
was
saw
going to
it in
say,
the
I have a
theater.
visceral memory of watching RoboCop in a theater, even though my parents would have never, ever taken me to an R-rated movie. I mean, so I mean, just like I don't know how this slipped through, but yeah, I just have these early memories of seeing that
It's
movie
like the guy
several times.
dissolves in toxic waste and stuff.
Yes.
But beyond that, it is really a cutting satire, I
Yeah.
think, right? Like it's very funny and um But then moving forward into the sequels, I don't remember them actually terribly well, so I can't say too much. I'd have to revisit, but they weren't as good. I remember that.
Certainly
And
not.
it started getting kind of cheesier. And then the previous series was like a kids series.
Yeah,
It's all kind of weird. I mean,
yeah,
because really, if you watch the first film, RoboCop isn't even a hero. He's a tragically exploited cop
exactly.
who didn't want this, you know.
I did enjoy. There's a piece we have here that we'll link to from the Hollywood Reporter, maybe some unintended commentary where it said, you know, that the 1987 RoboCop was set in this dystopian Detroit, futuristic setting. How I think it said there's not even really a sense of where they would put it. They could put it today. They could put it into a very near future that's, you know,
Uh,
where the U.S. is falling apart. So there's just, yeah, there's we could drop RoboCop into today and have some real modern issues that we discuss.
yeah, and I think near future, alternate present, something like that is what I would do. I would definitely would set it in Detroit.
Yeah,
There's a statue of RoboCop in Detroit. Come on,
really,
man.
I did not know
Yeah,
that.
man. Uh, Even
Rocky
look
and
it up.
RoboCop. Okay.
Rocky was in Philly, wasn't he?
Yeah, I'm just saying that's the things that people want to put in their cities is I get the Rocky one. I did not know there was a RoboCop statue.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That the RoboCop, it's also a weird thing to have a statue of. RoboCop is a weird figure, but then so that's my curiosity here, right? Like, what if they make this series? What are they doing with this series? James Wan being involved apparently is kind of interesting, but yeah. So like, what's the tone? What's the approach? What kind of series is this? Is it um dark, violent satire for adults, or is
Yeah.
it like sanitized kind of, hey kids, isn't it cool how this cop's half cyborg robot
Yeah.
guy?
There's
I
a
mean,
gun that comes out of his leg. Yeah, it's awesome.
yeah, like it could kind of go in either direction or somewhere in between. But I am intrigued about that, and if it does come to fruition, I probably will check it out and see what they're doing anyway. Um, Something I definitely am excited about is the news that Bill Hader and Buffy Boudreaux are working on developing a comedy series for HBO, working on a pilot. Not a ton of information here, but certainly given how good I think Barry is,
Mhm.
you say Bill Hader, I'm in.
Yeah, I was going to say Bill Hader and Duffy Boudreaux have collaborated on several things before. I could not recall. Did they collaborate at all on Barry? I mean, you and I both obviously love this show and just think so highly of it, but I could not recall if they collaborated on Barry specifically.
I believe the answer is yes, and like I think that this article I was reading from Variety about the new series says that they did. I just don't know what level of involvement Duffy Boudreaux had, to be honest.
Yeah, this
I
seems like
know
a
that,
pure co-pro between them. They're going to do some sort of comedy and could be a dark comedy about, it says here, a woman in a small town that has a big secret. But yeah, I mean HBO plus Bill Hader, sure, I'm going to be there too.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I will say, part of me wants Bill Hader to direct a horror film,
Yeah,
but whatever he wants to do, I'm there, and excited for that. I wouldn't expect to see that anytime terribly soon if
yeah,
they're just putting it in development now. But I'd be surprised if it didn't happen given the previous
yeah.
relationship with HBO, and in fact HBO kind of needs some new shows, honestly.
Yeah, it's somewhat related to that. This is not something we've talked about or prepared for here, but I was secretly hoping, but I haven't seen anything to this effect, that Bill Hader might be involved in the HBO/Max show coming up, Welcome to Derry, which is sort of the It prequel. You know, he was
Mm.
involved in the movie franchise, and I was hoping, oh, maybe he could get involved with that, sort of add his spin to it, but it doesn't seem like he's involved in that at all. It's moving forward and coming next year, but I don't think Bill Hader is involved in that at all.
I don't think so, or at least I haven't heard anything along those lines.
Yeah.
So um, this is the only thing I've heard that he's doing next after Barry.
Yeah.
But as I said, particularly if you think about the one episode of the last season of Barry in Kansas or wherever they were, I don't know, they ever actually told us exactly where
Hmm.
they were. Yeah, and he's got the chops to do a horror film for sure. So
Yeah, I mean, this was. I mean, frankly, some of the more interesting news I saw this week that Bill Hader will partner up again with HBO again about a comedy about a woman in a small town with a big secret. We don't know anything more than that. We don't know dates. We don't know other people. We don't know who will run this thing other than these two will be involved. So, yeah, looking forward to. Yeah, we're
Yeah,
getting to the point now where we get things like this. It's probably 2026, I'm going to guess.
probably. I mean, they're. Oh, that was the thing I was going to say about The Last of Us. Still no date for when season
Yeah,
two
no
is
official. We
of
know
being tested out.
2025, but no official date. Yeah.
2025 sometime.
Yeah.
I would expect it's far enough along. I would expect it's probably going to be early 2025 for The Last of Us.
First
But
season was released in January, so hopefully.
yeah, but they're withholding a date. And yes, so if something is just being developed, it could potentially be late 2025, I think, if it really kind of
Yeah.
moved fast, but probably 2026. I can't believe those are the real years we're living in, by the way. Every so often, I'm like, isn't that the future? They did
Speaking
a
of
number on
dystopian
us.
futures, yeah,
They
exactly.
did a
Exactly.
number on us when we were kids because all this stuff in the 80s were like, we're going to set this in the future. What's the future? How about 2021?
That's right.
We'll never live to see
We'll
that,
never
but
get there. Yeah.
that's great.
Oh gosh.
One more thing we got a trailer for the show disclaimer come to Apple TV Plus that we've been talking about a little bit. It's possibly something we'll cover on the podcast a couple weeks down the line. I don't know. Thoughts on this one?
Yeah, so this sort of caught my interest a few weeks ago. We had been behind the scenes sort of throwing around the idea of covering this. This is also about a woman with apparently a very big secret. The trailer was released just this week, I think a couple days ago, and doesn't give away too much of, I guess, what the story is, but this is going to be quite the psychological thriller about some sort of famous author or journalist who has this dark secret. I mean, the combination of Kate Blanchett, Sacha Baron Cohen, Kevin Kline, that's a pretty interesting trio of leads to put towards a show. Alfonso Cuarón, who has been only in films before, is moving over to television, had Kate Blanchett in mind to do this. I encourage people to watch the trailer because it does look quite interesting. But this is going to come out in, I think, early October, run for 7 weeks. Looks quite dramatic, but in terms of being a thriller, that is exactly what it looks like.
Yeah, indeed. I am intrigued, and maybe in particular because of the director from having Alfonso Cuarón attached. It feels like Apple TV Plus has put out a number of shows where it's like, hey, look at this really good cast, and then the show's maybe just not really very interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
But I have a bit more hope for this one because it's not only a really good cast, but a good director, critically acclaimed director, and all of that. And I know that I looked this up the other day. I know I've seen at
Yeah.
least one of his
He's done
films. What did he
Roma,
make?
he did Gravity, he did Pan's Labyrinth, Children of Men. He's got a lot of I mean, very distinct in terms of style and theme, very interesting movies in the past 15, 20 years.
Yeah, I thought Pan's Labyrinth was Guillermo del Toro.
He was involved. It was very early for him. He was involved in the creation of
Oh,
that movie.
okay.
But yeah, that was primarily Guillermo del Toro project. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I think it was Children of Men was the one that stood out to me
Yep.
when I was
Yep.
looking at the list, refreshing my memory. So yeah, um, definitely intrigued by the show, and I guess a note to people: potentially, we're going to talk about it on the podcast. We will need to be finding something to move to after Penelope, and this is one of the things we're thinking about. So,
Yes.
um,
The timing works for what we want to do after disclaimer, which we can save
yeah,
that news for later. Yeah.
yeah, we were going to go back in the Apple TV Plus bag, right? It's like, oh, we played around a
Right.
little bit with the Netflix show and go home to Apple TV Plus for the next
Yeah. Yeah.
4 months or
Still
whatever.
waiting on that check, Apple. Still waiting.
Yeah, indeed, indeed. Um, so yeah, I mean, I haven't watched all that much this week, as I was saying before. The only thing that I think is maybe worth noting briefly is Secret Base. The I don't even know how to refer to these things because they name Secret Base is the YouTube channel, and then they
Yes.
name individual shows. But then there's also the name of the episodes of the shows or something. I don't know. They're doing something kind of weird. So this is pretty good, but the name of it is Reform. It's a three-part documentary on the Reform Party.
Oh, okay.
Um, which the first part of it they put up a few months ago, I think, on YouTube for everyone, and they withheld parts 2 and 3. Like I could have watched them sooner if I'd given the money through Patreon or whatever, but
Yeah.
I didn't. I didn't do that. But they came to YouTube within the past week or two. So I
This
watched those. It's pretty
is
interesting
this
stuff.
is this scratching the election itch for you? Is this, just I don't know, is this a series they're doing, or is this a one-off? What's the scope of how they're approaching this?
You know, I think this is it for the reform doc. It's 3 parts. Each is like over an hour long. And then I'm not sure exactly what the premise of Pretty Good is and what else John Boys might get into with under the Pretty Good banner.
Yeah,
So I'm curious to see because, a lot of the stuff that Secret Base does is sports.
yeah,
This isn't sports, it's politics. It's done in a
yeah.
similar kind of style to things like that Minnesota Vikings documentary I got sucked into and stuff like that. But mostly it's just that the Reform Party is kind of fascinating. And,
Yeah,
I'm old enough to have memories related to this, kind of
yeah,
remembering Ross Perot buying a half hour of primetime TV to talk about the national debt and stuff like that.
yeah.
Um,
Likely costing Bush the re-election. Yes.
Maybe the thing is, it's just like so weird as John Boyce digs into on this. It's like Ross Perot's pulling from Republicans and Democrats, and is the most successful third party candidate of our lifetime, right? And then it
Yes.
carries forward from how, because of how well he did in 1992 and 1996, the Reform Party qualified for federal funding because they were above the 5% threshold, and so
I see. Okay.
so then there's the question of, well, how do we keep this going and actually make the Reform Party a party? And so the documentary digs into the various figures, characters, weirdos who kind of glom on to the idea of the Reform Party. And then we go through
Yeah.
Jesse Ventura,
Yes.
um,
Yes. Okay.
and then up through 2000, how it came about that their candidate in 2000 was Pat Buchanan. I'm sorry if any of this is spoilers for people, by the way. This is all stuff I remembered before I even watched this thing. But it's really I don't know. It's more just kind of fascinating, and I don't know that it ultimately has like a message or a point or something. Just
Right.
kind of, hey, let's
Right.
let's dig into what was going on with these guys, what was going on with this Reform Party business, and
Yeah.
it's interesting stuff. I would recommend it if people have any kind of interest in this kind of thing, right? Like obviously, if a documentary about the Reform Party sounds boring to you on its face, don't watch it, right? But if it
Yeah.
sounds kind of interesting, this is pretty good. See what I did there.
Well, the only thing I wanted to mention was, speaking of, I guess, elections in this season, my blood pressure show comes back today. Tonight we will get the first episode of the new season of Great British Baking Show. This comes on Netflix. Those that are familiar with this model know that it airs over in the UK on Tuesdays, I think, and then US Netflix gets it on Fridays. This is just a peaceful family show for us, but I absolutely love it. Love the humor that they put into it, and the competition is really good as well. So that does come back tonight. So we'll gather around the uh, the couch and watch some British desserts being made tomorrow night. Very very very, like I said, calm, relaxing, peaceful show. No drama. It's wonderful.
Sounds good. Yeah, you mentioned that show before. I've still yet to watch it.
I'm just a glutton for all of these soapy cooking shows, anyways. That it's nice to have a sort of palate cleanser. So that's too many food puns, but yeah, you just it's good. It's a very wholesome, very good, interesting, funny show. So I'll be checking that out tonight. And then I just wanted to spend a few seconds on Matlock, which
All right.
debuted this week. I think we've heard about this. We've seen this a while back. That Kathy Bates starring in I don't even know if you call it a reboot or a redo or what kind of series this is, but it's Matlock, and she plays a character who is a lawyer with the last name of Matlock. And the reason why I checked it out was because social media was sort of a buzz about this twist ending that the pilot episode gives us. And so I thought I'd check it out. And just to say, don't know that I'll continue with it, but I was very pleasantly surprised with sort of the direction that the show will likely take based on this ending of the pilot. I mean, yes, very procedural, very common tropes, very much you could predict sort of what the outcome would have been in the quote unquote case of the week part of the pilot. But this direction that they're pointing with this twist at the end, it made me stand up and pay attention. I was very pleasantly surprised by it. Good pilot if anyone wants to check it out this week.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, it seems like a lot of people are saying good things, and it was on my radar already, and I'm feeling increasingly motivated to potentially check it out. You know, we need good procedural case of the
Yes,
week episodic shows. Yeah, make those,
yes,
man.
yes.
So,
This one seems like it's going to have a very procedural lawyer feel to it, and then have this undercurrent of something that seems to be very, very interesting, which is where the twist comes in. So, yeah, encourage people that might at all be interested in that. And apparently, as we talked about a couple weeks ago, this is going to be Kathy Bates' last thing that she does before she retires. So, some more incentive there to check it out.
yeah, Kathy Bates is good.
Yep.
So we'll have to check that out. All right, then. Well, I think it's time to talk about Penelope. Um, a little bit of preamble. We've talked about this show on the podcast before. Um, Independently produced by Duplass Brothers, Duplass Brothers Productions, created and written by Mark Duplass and Mel Eslin. Mel Eslin directed it all. They made all 8 episodes. Apparently, Mark Duplass got the idea during the pandemic, is what I read, and I think he
I think
means
so.
sort
Yeah.
of during like quarantine lockdown time.
Hmm.
And they shopped it around, and places either didn't want to buy it and fund it, or they had weird notes like, "What if there's magic?" And so they kind
Yeah.
of,
When did the superheroes show up? Yeah.
yeah. So they made it on their own and took quite a big risk here, and we've talked about that before, and that was part of what put it on our radar. I'm also personally, a fan of a lot of stuff that the Duplasses have done, and the Duplass brothers productions, and so on. So, been looking forward to this show. Um, on the other side here of a brief musical interlude, we are going to dig into some spoilers territory. In terms of the first 4 episodes of season 1. There are 8 episodes altogether. So we're talking about the first half here today, and the plan is to talk about the second half next week, right? So, of course, you're free to listen if you haven't watched it yet. We are going to talk about what happens in the first 4 episodes, and spoilers are potentially on the table. Um, but yeah, okay, we'll be back in about 10 seconds.
Okay, we are back to talk about Penelope. New season just premiered this week on Netflix. We are looking at season 1, episodes 1 through 4, just simply titled 1, 2, 3, and 4. As Cameron mentioned, this is from Mark Duplass and Mel Eslin. Seeking to take a break from the always connected and online world, 16-year-old Penelope leaves her family and friends during a trip to venture out into nature, try to rediscover herself, and learn more about what her purpose may be. Along the way, during the first half of this season, she learns some survival skills, befriends a bear, makes deep connection with a tree conservationist, and learns just generally how to be self-sufficient in the wilderness as she thinks more about who it is that she wants to be and what it is that she should do. Um, Very interesting, unique show for a lot of
Yeah.
reasons. And curious to talk about this with you, but I'll just sort of start with this. We don't see many other people besides this 16-year-old girl in this show. So who do you think this show is meant for? Is this for teens? Is this for adults? Or what's the sense of who you think this was created for?
It is, yeah, it's interesting because it definitely has a kind of young adult feel, YA feel to it. Um, Certain elements of it remind me of reading. Did you read that book as a kid called like Hatchet? The Hatchet.
Yep. Yep.
I can't remember who wrote that off the top of my head. I didn't make a note of it. But it definitely has something of that feel to it. And I think one thing that we'll talk about here, but we should perhaps get out of the way, as it were, is how we're reacting to it from our perspective as 40 somethings or whatever, right?
Hmm.
But I certainly tried in watching it to get myself towards the point of view that Penelope has, like why is she doing this? What's going on? How it's an adventure? What are the motivations behind it? And we have to speculate a little bit and read into that a little bit. Um, so I don't know. I mean, in terms of the question as you phrased it, I'm going to say, why not both, right? Like, I don't see any
Yeah.
reason that teens couldn't watch the show, but I also don't see any reason why adults can't enjoy it.
Yeah, I found myself thinking the same thing that while I think the brief pieces of information we have as to why she's doing what she's doing, those are certainly inherent to teenagers. They are not exclusive to teenagers, right? That
Mm-hmm.
I feel myself just being caught up in a world that is something I don't want to be a part of anymore, something that it just feels like I'm on a treadmill in many ways. I want to just break free from that and go figure out, really what am I supposed to do and who am I supposed to be? So while it may be a 16-year-old girl, it's still things that middle-aged adults can relate to, and it certainly is middle-aged adults that wrote this thing. So there's some themes there as well.
Yeah. And in terms of the pacing and the style and all of this, right? You asked who's it for? I'd actually be really curious. Is it for teens? Would they be patient enough to watch it?
Yeah.
Maybe though, right? Maybe there's something about the desire that's being, expressed here and portrayed that young people would connect to.
Yeah.
And I simply don't know on that front. I'd have to talk to a youth who watched the show. But I
Yeah.
mean, you can hardly imagine anything more different than the TikToks, right? It's like a constant simulation of short videos. Here it's like long shots of the woods with um a minimalistic music. I did really enjoy the music. I think it plays a
Yes,
big role
I,
in this as
I did
well.
too.
I want to mention that.
I thought exactly the same thing as you're saying is, there's literal tree hugging in this show. There is,
Yeah.
I mean, just moments where, yes, it is the opposite of fast paced and quick views and move from one thing to the next. It is lingering on shots and ideas and um, struggling to learn something and watching her do it over and over and over and over again. And it's like, yeah, so your normal teenager might or might not find that appealing. And maybe that's part of the point. Why aren't we slowing down and thinking about these things?
I mean, I think it is part of the point to the extent that I myself, in watching this, kept thinking, why don't you just give up and go home? Why don't you go back to civilization? Why are you, you know, but she keeps persevering in doing things like figuring out how to boil water and building her tent and has a kind of commitment to what she's up to and a certain kind of fearlessness and belief in herself to be able to do this
Yeah.
that is I don't know what the right word is, but it's appealing. I mean, there's something I enjoy about that.
Yeah, it does again have a sense of, man, if only I could find myself in a position where I could do this or not focus on anything else other than learn how to build a tent for a couple of days. It's just sort of this. I I, I don't know that it's necessarily aspirational, but it is, man, to have that be the only thing that you care about, type of situation. It just almost seems foreign to almost anybody.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is I'm tempted to say a fantasy about just kind of disappearing,
Hmm.
just disconnecting, disappearing, uninscribing oneself from this complex social reality, getting away from the internet and the smartphone. And at first she's using her phone, and it was
Yeah.
striking to me at one point where she like turns her phone back on and like is shocked by it. She's like, no.
I was going to ask you about that. Like, was
Um,
that oh my gosh, it actually turned on? No, I don't want anything to do with that.
yeah, like actually I don't want anything to do with that. Now, of course, one thing that's at play here that we need to talk about, and there's no avoiding it, is what she's doing to her parents.
Okay, so as someone who has a 16-year-old daughter, let me speak to this for just a minute.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, if I am her parents, I mean, we don't have a sense these first four episodes of what they're doing or how they are trying to find her, but I cannot imagine a more fearful, harrowing, stressful situation than what she has done to them, right?
Hmm.
She has left them a note saying, I'm going off by myself in a place they don't know, in a place they don't understand. And I presume they're looking for her, but in her quest to find herself has I just as a parent, she's made a very selfish decision here to put
Yeah.
her family through this.
Well, and I found myself thinking that as someone who, I don't have a child,
Right, right.
but nevertheless found myself feeling like, oh my God, really?
Yeah, I
You're just
mean,
gonna take off, and exchange a few text messages and then like hop on a train and voice record a message and send it, and then presumably turn off the phone and not
turn off
use it again.
location services, turn off everything.
Um,
I mean, you are simply in a place where you cannot be found at that point. And like I said, I just, some real maybe imbued trauma on feeling what, trying to be empathetic about what the parents would have been going through here. It just, yeah, it just made me cringe of what they're having to go through as they, thinking about that aspect of it as Penelope goes on this journey.
yeah, that's tough because presumably they're freaking out
Exactly.
constantly
Yeah.
and fairly, you know. So I found it a little bit of the struggle on that front. I'm curious to see what ultimately happens, right? Because you could well imagine a sort of standard way of ending the story would be that she goes home at the end of the
Hmm.
season. Um, I wonder if that is what we're going to get or if not, right?
Yeah.
I think the door's
Yeah.
open to the possibility that it's not. But so, yeah, I was feeling that too. Um, and it almost felt like resistance to the show in a certain way. So I really tried to overcome that and as much as I could take up her perspective and follow that as we move forward. But yeah, man, um, I don't even know.
Yeah. I mean, it's one thing to leave your parents a voicemail that says, I'm going to go stay at a friend's for a week. I don't, I need to just get away. It's another to literally disappear. So we don't need to keep going on this, but yeah, it's not,
Yeah,
not the same.
and she said, "Don't look for me," and all
Yeah.
that, and
Yeah.
I mean, also she's 16. You know, if you were 19 or something, even you'd probably freak out. You'd still probably
Yeah,
freak out, but you'd be up to say, well, she's an adult or whatever. She's not an adult.
definitely.
Um, goes and sleeps in some guy's van. I mean, he seems cool
Now,
though.
I mean,
That guy seemed
yeah,
cool.
yeah, because he seemed great, and I'm glad that we did not go down a different story than it could have there. But uh, did the parents not teach the daughter to not go into strange people's vans? I mean, anyway, we don't have to go down this road anymore. I'm
It
just,
is really striking to me, and I don't think unrealistic how everyone she encounters is really, really nice and
yeah,
kind,
yeah,
right? And got me thinking about the kindness of strangers. There's a kind of poignant scene in maybe it's episode 2 when she encounters the other campers and
mhm.
she's lost her water bottle, so they give her a water bottle, and we don't even really hear them talking so much. We just kind
Yeah.
of
There's
the
there's no dialogue there. I noticed that.
I think there is, but you can't quite hear it.
Yeah,
It's like they have the dialogue, but they put it down in the mix below the music. Um, really interesting style and definitely reminiscent in various ways of um, the stuff that Duplass Brothers have previously done, in terms of they call mumblecore. You ever get into
yeah,
mumblecore? I don't know if this is quite mumblecore, but it feels
yeah.
somewhat close stylistically.
I did find myself particularly bookended by the conversation with Sam, I think, in the van, and then I can't remember the lady's name who's staying up in the tree. just
Helena.
interesting. Yeah, yeah, Helena, interesting, powerful conversations. Wish that there had been more of what kind of conversation did you get between that couple and Penelope. Found myself wanting, some of that. Maybe it's just, I don't know, maybe the lack of dialogue is making me slightly uncomfortable or wanting, sort of fill in some of those holes. Has that been something that's distracted you at all? Because there's not much dialogue in the show, as you can imagine, teenager being out on their own, other than sort of some self-reflection that she's talking to herself.
Yeah, she talks to the tree.
Yeah.
You know, she talks to the bear.
The
We'll
bear.
talk about the bear more here in a moment. There is a tension that runs through things. Um, Certainly, I felt a tension with regard to the bear.
Yeah.
Even the cute bear cub, like that's still a bear.
Yeah, that's right.
You
It
know,
will grow up.
yeah. Um, and I don't know though. I didn't really in the scene we were talking about where she runs into the other campers. I thought it worked. It was effective, and almost like we didn't need to actually really be hearing their conversation. We kind of knew what their conversation was, even
Yeah.
though we didn't hear it. And these people were helping her out.
Yeah. They're teaching her
Um,
things. Yeah.
yeah, and he gives her a flint and all of that kind of stuff. Um, at the same time, part of the tension is that the level of he just continually thinking, well, why are you doing this, right? I mean, like even though she's encountered nice people and she seems to pretty much be doing okay, and she's in a park where in theory there's a ranger not too far away or whatever, she still puts herself at significant risk
Yeah.
doing all of this.
Yeah. In a park that she's in illegally, by the way, but just
Yeah,
chalk that up to being 16.
and I mean, like, what? Like that's the least of your worries here. What you're gonna get a ticket or something?
Yeah.
You get caught for illegal camping and get fined or something. I mean, I think that from Penelope's perspective, the big negative there would that be that she got kicked out and they would search down her parents and her adventure would be over, right? Not
Exactly.
that it's a
Yeah.
not that she'd have to pay a fine or whatever.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the bear.
Yeah.
So first, just a little curiosity on my point. In the episode with the bear, I guess it's really just one episode with
Hmm.
the bear. At the end it says introducing Cinder the bear.
Yes.
So of course, me being me, I immediately went to Google and typed in Cinder the bear.
Yeah.
And what I found was a bear named Cinder who was rescued from a wildfire and became something of an icon. I mean, someone wrote a children's book and various things, but then also reports that some hunter killed this bear
Yeah.
6 years ago.
Yeah.
So I don't know what's going on here.
I think maybe just a reference or a giving some. I don't know. They just know the story. I don't know if we set in Washington State, which is where the Cinder the Bear came from. I think we're
I
near
believe
there.
so. I
So
believe so. I think we are in Washington State.
yeah, so I think it may just be a nod to that bear or to its story, and maybe just drawing light to the idea that this was sort of became this icon and had all these things done for it and written about it, and then some hunter just went off and killed it apparently.
Yeah, so but perhaps that is it's an illusion
Yeah,
to the previous bear because it couldn't be Cinder the bear actually in the show, I
right.
guess, since a hunter killed Cinder. So yeah, maybe this was the idea to get us to look it up and make us a bit sad,
Yeah, yeah.
and and then you could draw a parallel in certain ways between that and the cutting down of the tree at the end of episode 4, which I
Hmm.
want to talk about more. Um, you put internets that everything seems real. And I think that's true. I think that is a real bear. I'm not sure about the mama bear. That one might have been
Yeah, and very
special
well
effects.
may have been. It just seemed like she was. And again, I'm sure I could be fooled these days with how advanced the technology is, but it seems like she is starting fires interacting with a real small bear. I mean, just really doing some of this work, which, extremely impressive for a young actress.
Yeah, yeah. And that would be, I mean, that would be entirely in line, I think, with the style of what the Duplass brothers are doing here. So I do think that all of that is real. I'm now imagining the filming where they're like, all right, keep trying to make a fire till it works.
Yeah, that's
Got the
right.
camera. But it's in line with this low budget, kind of minimalistic thing. And I do believe that the bear cub is a real bear,
Yeah.
but I'm not sure about the big bear that destroys their campsite that we only get a quick shot of.
That would be very dangerous. Yes.
I don't know that they brought in a real bear. I mean, I suppose you could. I suppose there
Yeah.
are bears out there you could use. But yeah, so let's talk about the whole thing when after the bear destroys her campsite, she decides she's going to go to town to buy more supplies. She's planning to come back.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that goes. But she runs into Helena up in the tree, and we see the helicopter. Penelope sees a helicopter, and
Hmm.
ultimately learn, okay, what's going on here is a helicopter's coming around to give Helena a warning. They're going to cut down that tree and other trees or whatever. And so we learn that she has been um, this kind of literal tree hugger for decades, right? One of these people who will go and um, be in the tree so you can't cut it down.
Exactly. Yep.
And we get some good conversation, I think, between her and Penelope that I want to talk about.
Yeah, it's almost like this is the reason why Penelope went on this journey, this time of self-reflection to find someone like this who it's one of the more interesting aspects of the conversation to me was her saying that used to be a whole bunch of them. Now it's, no one really does anymore. It's just her, but it's something she's so committed to and so focused on and so devoted to that she's still at her advanced age is pursuing this and making sure that it's something that is remains important to her. Gave her purpose in many ways, which is what I think Penelope is looking for, and and so I don't know what will then happen or if this character will show up again in the next 4 episodes, but it seemed like. Oh, did you find what you were looking for here halfway through, or part of what you were looking for? Just thought it was a relevant conversation to what it seemed like some of the themes were.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's definitely hitting the themes. And what are those? Um, we had some conversation about, so why is Helena doing this? Protecting the trees, okay. Penelope, of course, connects to that. We've already seen her literally hug a previous tree, ask that previous tree for protection,
Yeah,
and so on. Big, beautiful trees and all of that, right? But at the same time, Penelope's interested in kind of interrogating the details. Why do they want to cut down these trees? Well, they say the trees are sick
hmm,
and could make other trees sick. And you get that conversation about the communication between trees. And really, Helena has this kind of review of the world that I don't know if it holds up to pressure, like
yeah.
scientifically speaking. And maybe the trees are sick and and then so on. And I think Penelope equally is a bit unsure, but she's really kind of intrigued by the structure of Helena's commitment, I think, more than its content, if that makes sense. That was how it struck me, at least.
Yeah, I actually really thought it was a I thought the idea, the metaphor used about the tree being sick was quite adept for what exactly I believe they're trying to do with this show. So if you think about the idea of Penelope eventually someday is going to be a part of a community again. And essentially what Helena's talked about is a community of trees. When you have a community and one person or a couple people in that are sick or are broken or are a certain way, will that then impact the community to make them that way? Or can the community come in and heal that person or that
Mhm.
tree or that whatever it is? And I think that what Helena's trying to say is that Um, no matter which side of it you're on, there is hope if you're broken, and there is a purpose for you if you're a part of that community and are involved with someone who is sick or broken or suffering. I just thought it was a good metaphor for sort of how it seems like. Again, we know very little of Penelope before this journey, but certainly what she's going to go back and see when she gets back.
Yeah, well, I like that. How do you view the um, kind of taint on the community or whatever, right? There's a sickness.
Hmm.
Um, is it a kind of, do we take the approach of fearing that that's going to spread and contaminate everyone and we need to cut it out and kill it, as opposed to Helena's view, which is that the community coming together will take care of and help
Yes.
the tree that needs help. I don't really know if that's true
Yeah, well,
with regard to
I
trees.
like the way you phrased it. Don't know if put under pressure if that's what happens or not.
Yeah, but if you take it in relation to human beings, well, there I might be tempted to say it could go either way,
Yeah,
you know, and then part of what the show is doing is hopefully getting us to ask ourselves that question about um, how we view ourselves in relation to others,
exactly.
and how we view perhaps those negative elements, whatever your point of view is, whatever's coming to mind is still whether do we, try to excise the sickness and kill
Yeah,
it or something, or is there a way to come together and heal or something like
yeah.
that?
I mean, that's exactly the way that I read it. That being a part of something, of some group, of some community, if your first reaction is just to get rid of the thing that's causing, especially if it's a member of that community that's causing pain or struggle or stress, that's not the purpose of being in a community. Just like if you're just going to chop down a tree at the first sign of it being sick, yeah, that's clearly how I read it as well.
Yeah, and then when they're talking about why Penelope is doing what she's doing,
Hmm.
she says something about feeling broken or feeling like she'll never be whole or something like that. Um, at risk of getting too into the weeds, this definitely got me thinking of romanticism with a capital R, like a tradition of thought and so on the way to the romantics, but
Yeah,
also seeking kind of wholeness through nature, and so on. But then it also got me thinking, being who I am, that yeah, you don't get that.
yeah. No, I
I
don't think
mean,
so.
I don't know if it's the human condition or if it's the modern human condition. That's maybe an interesting question. But that the kind of sense of wholeness that she's talking about is just not going to be available, and it's rather a matter of learning to live with the fact that you don't have that or something like this.
Yeah, and it's at that point that I thought, I wish we had 1 or 2 minutes of some story of Penelope before she leaves on this journey. I mean, she's just at a
Yeah,
party of some kind or at some sort of multifamily trip or something, and then just wakes up one morning and leaves. And so I wish we had a little something of what it is, but I guess I can empathize again, knowing struggles of a 16-year-old teenage girl.
she's at what is a very weird event, which seems to be one where everyone is wearing headphones, listening to their own music and dancing, quote unquote, together.
Yes.
If you attend to that scene, it's
Yes.
very weird, and I don't know if people do this, but it did take me to symbolize how there's a disconnection, between the individuals at that dance party. We're not even all dancing to the same music.
Yeah.
um I think that functions as a certain symbol, and then she sees the wolf and the sort of call of the wild sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I definitely think it makes sense that this is what she's after in terms of communing with nature, and perhaps that sense of a kind of metaphysical fullness of being whole. But yeah, I don't think you can get that, right?
Yeah.
So I think the story
And I
ultimately
got
has
from
to be about
the
how she doesn't get it.
yeah, and from the brief glimpse of what she's at, the sense of, yeah, you're at some sort of group gathering, but it's all very individualistic to where you're maybe you're listening to the same things but you've got headphones on and you can't interact and you can't, you're experiencing the same thing, but there's no connection there between people.
Yeah, I thought it was an odd scene. And again, I don't know if people do that or not, really. Maybe they do, but it definitely, that's how I read it, kind of symbolically. Clearly, she has a connection with Lana. The other thing I want to talk about here, and I think you did too, in terms of our notes, is this inherited trauma idea. And I felt like there was a real parallel between Helena tells the story about her mother and the dead dog in the parking lot, and how her mother breaks down just wailing
Yes.
at the sight of the dead dog in the parking lot. And then the loggers come back and they actually cut down the tree,
Yeah.
and Helena's wailing. And I don't know, I connected those things personally. Did you?
Yeah. I was trying to think more about my first thought when that started coming up was we didn't have pets or anything growing up. I never saw, other than with sort of immediate family member, that level um of what she's describing. So not exactly, but more so a sense of um from a familial perspective, we would do anything for each other, but I don't know that I ever witnessed to that level what she's talking about.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know that I have either. And then the story I think is interesting. It's not their dog, it's just some random dog,
Right, exactly.
right? Um, but when they're going into the store, the dog's just kind of, around. And when they come out, someone's accidentally run over the dog. And Helena seems to be suggesting that, something about that triggers in her mother a
Yeah,
deep pain, a trauma that perhaps cuts back generations that even she doesn't understand, right?
yeah,
Because that's part of her point in talking about this, that we are
yeah.
marked by the traumas of our ancestors in ways that connect us to them, but
Mhm.
also that this structure would mean that it's not fully conscious, right? Like, and can't be. I don't really understand why I'm feeling this kind of pain.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure that I necessarily agree or even understand the idea that that type of sort of trauma or empathy or reflection can be passed down. Certainly, it's, not from a hereditary sense, but
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. I just
I
didn't.
don't know if that
I
holds up to
didn't.
pressure either, if that's what you're
Yeah,
saying.
exactly.
But it's interesting idea, and at very least, I think it provides a way of thinking about how it is that something can so deeply affect you in a way that maybe doesn't make rational sense, right? Like, why would you be so upset about that dead dog?
Yeah, yeah.
What is that triggering, as a
Hmm.
as a symbol that, because it's clearly kind of not directly about that dog who's just
Right.
not even your dog.
Yeah.
Um,
That dog is a representation of some other kind of trauma or buildup of things that just get to that breaking point there in that situation.
yeah, and maybe another way we could take this in terms of the parallel or the resonance I felt with the felling of the tree and Helena wheeling, is a feeling about this shift in society or humanity, or how is it that you could be so careless and reckless to run over a dog in the parking lot and then drive away, presumably?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
here, Helena is expressing this confidence to Penelope that they won't cut down the trees if we're here. Don't worry about it. They're not going to cut down the trees if we're
Yeah.
here. And then they do. They do it
Yeah.
anyway. Um, it's now just her camping out in the tree instead of a whole group like it used to
Yeah.
be decades ago. But so, like, okay, maybe if there were more people, then it would still be effective. I don't know. Maybe the um, engines of late capitalism keep pushing forward to where now we don't even care that some
Yeah.
activist is trying to protect the tree. We're gonna we're gonna cut trees down anyway. Like, okay, we're not gonna cut this tree down when she's up in the tree,
Yeah.
perhaps, but you're not gonna kill people potentially, yeah,
Yeah.
but also just going to kind of harshly do it with the confidence that in the grand scheme of things, people aren't going to notice, you know?
Yeah. People aren't going to notice.
Um,
We're convinced that we're right. The minority opinion of one or two doesn't mean as much or matter as much as when more people say it, believe it, are part of it. Yeah, we'll just do what we want because we're convinced that we're right. I think that she sort of senses that. Both of them sense that by the end.
yeah, I think that's part of the reaction, right? I think is not just that they cut down the tree, which Helene is upset about, but the fact that they would cut down the tree, if that makes sense.
Yes, yes.
Um, Even though she's there as she has been fighting this fight,
Yeah,
um, that they do it anyway.
yeah.
Then there's this violent. I don't know. It was very effective to me.
It really is,
It's
and it was a good, it was a very interesting place to sort of draw the halfway mark, right? And for us
yeah,
to stop there and say, "Oh, okay, we don't know what's going to happen in the last four. I've not watched ahead. I don't know if this is something where she's going to get out, needs to get out, is going to return back, changed. We don't know, but certainly the experiences that she's having would lead her or lead us to believe that she's starting to find the things that she was looking for, and then as she changed when she comes out of the force on the other, metaphorically on the other side.
yeah, yeah. I'm really curious about it. So we're gonna watch the rest of the series and talk about or the rest of the season. This is a related question, I guess, right? So, what's going to happen over these next 4 episodes? To what extent is this the complete story?
Mm,
Because some of the things I read, we're talking about how they independently produced this show. They kept ownership of the show, made a distribution deal with Netflix.
yeah,
I believe have been working out some other distribution globally, and I don't have the details about that. But when it comes down to it, like Netflix can't cancel this show, really. Like
right,
if they want to make more of this, Netflix could decline to
yeah,
distribute further
right,
seasons.
right,
Um, but if they decided to make more, they could. They retain ownership of it in that way. Having read some of that, I just don't know how much to read into it. Is there really an implication here that they potentially want to make a season two? And I
yeah.
don't know.
It's a good question. I don't know how to in this model that they seemingly have innovatively created. I don't know how that'll pursue.
Yeah, I don't know what it would be either. And that's the
Yeah,
thing too. I'm into this kind of quiet, minimalistic
yeah,
vibe. Or I really did start, sort of vibing with this show in terms of just how it felt to be watching it.
yeah. I did too.
But not a lot happens per
Right.
se, right? Um, it's hard to kind of even trace what is the plot,
Yeah,
you
exactly,
know,
exactly.
other than 16-year-old girl goes off into the woods. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, at one point, she says to the bear, well, I guess we can call Cinder,
Hmm.
we'll make it together to winter.
Yeah.
So is her
Cool.
plan to stay in the woods until winter, but then at that point recognize I'm going to have to go back to civilization because I can't
Exactly.
camp through the winter, or what? I mean, it's kind of interesting that we spend all of our time with her and yet um, still don't exactly know what she's thinking, other than when she decides to
That's do
talk to
something. Yeah.
herself or talk to a tree or talk to a bear.
Yeah. There's a very good review on Variety about this show that basically in summary says it's excellent except for the fact that it's not sure what it wants to do or what, who it wants to be.
Hmm.
So we'll see if we find that true towards the end, but sort of what you're speaking to there.
Interesting. Yeah. I'll try to remember to go and read that after I've watched
After.
the next four
Yeah.
episodes, but before we record next week. And maybe we can tie it in then and see how we feel about what they were saying. But yeah, I think this has been good. Anything else you want to hit on before we wrap up here?
I think that's it for me.
All right, sounds good. So we'll be back next week talking about the second half of Penelope. Those would be episodes 5, 6, 7, and 8.
Yes.
And we hope you all will join us. If you enjoyed the podcast, please do leave a good rating review wherever you're listening to podcasts or however that works. I don't know. If you're on YouTube, give a thumbs up, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Appreciate it. You can follow TV Obsessive on social media if you want to, on X, on Facebook, on Blue Sky, Threads, Instagram. Technically, there's a Mastodon account, I suppose, if you use Mastodon. Um, I post things. Will post to Mastodon, but yeah, because you're using like buffer, right? You
Yeah.
just post it to multiple
Post
places, so
all.
things
Yeah.
show up on Mastodon. But anyhow, check out TVObsessive.com, read articles and things like that, and we'll see you next week.
All right. See you then.